Tonight, deal or no deal? A high-stakes White House meeting between the president and congressional leaders over the debt limit as the deadline over a possible U.S. default closes in. Plus, investigators search for a motive in the latest American mass shooting. And charges against the man behind the wheel in the horrific crash at a bus stop that killed 8 people.
8 counts of manslaughter, 10 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
This as the U.S. gets ready to lift pandemic-era restrictions at the southern border. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Tonight, the debt limit debate heats up, but first, a verdict in the civil rape case against former President Trump. Welcome to Faith Nation from our studio in Washington. I'm John Jessup. Well, the former president found not guilty of rape, but the jury did find Mr. Trump guilty of sexual abuse and defamation by a Manhattan jury hearing evidence in E. Jean Carroll's federal lawsuit accusing the former president, the jury awarding a total of about $5 million to the writer. The former president calling the verdict, quote, a disgrace. Well, the potential drive over the debt limit, Cliff, made a pit stop today at the White House, the president hosting a bipartisan summit with top leaders in both houses of Congress before a looming deadline when America runs out of money to pay its bills. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka joins us now from the Capitol. Matt, observers describe this as just a crucial opening.
Yeah, John, you mentioned that drive to potentially go over the cliff. A lot of people are hoping to stop that car. It's really hard to overstate just how the importance of today's meeting. A lot of economists, of course, saying that if America were to hit that debt limit, if we were to default on those debts, it would be catastrophic for the economy. Now, top Democrats, including the president, they want a clean debt limit raise. Republicans want to reel in spending. They want to make cuts, with Democrats saying they want those discussions reserved for the budget and not to hold the debt limit hostage. Now, of course, because of this pressure-packed situation and because of the potential for catastrophe, President Biden is getting a lot of pressure to relent or at least negotiate on these terms in order to avoid a potential crisis.
We've always paid our bills, but Democrats and Republicans have both used this moment to be able to look at it and say, let's talk about where we're going, what's the direction, what's the future. All of the debt limit increases under the Trump administration, none of those were clean. Speaker Pelosi demanded additional spending for every single one of them. So these are not moments where there's this quote unquote always clean unless Republicans are negotiating. But Republicans are very united at this point to say we should look at debt and deficit and to say what are we going to do to slow down our spending as a country.
Today's meeting between the president and the Big Four, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy and Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries, along with Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Now, just recently, 43 Senate Republicans recently signed on to a letter backing spending reforms tied to raising the debt ceiling, with Senator McConnell saying he's backing Speaker McCarthy in these negotiations. Of course, Democrats still pushing for a clean raise of the debt ceiling and to leave those cuts and on the budget. To leave those cuts for the budget negotiations.
We have a constitutional responsibility to make sure that we protect the full faith and credit of the United States of America. Everyday Americans understand this principle. If you have a bill, you need to pay it. If you fail to pay it, it's going to adversely impact your credit rating. Your credit score will drop. If your credit score drops, your costs are going to go up. And if America defaults on our bills, that's exactly what is going to happen, and everyone is going to pay the price.
Now, before the meeting, Speaker Kevin McCarthy said he does not want a short-term solution. He wants to fix what's going on right now. Hakeem Jeffries said something similar. He said that Congress shouldn't keep kicking the can down the road and leave the problem for another time. They also mentioned that today at the White House press briefing. But, of course, time is of the essence here. Speaker McCarthy saying there would need to be a deal in place by next week because of time constraints. With that clock ticking, America could hit that debt ceiling in just about a month, projected to be the first week of June. John?
That deadline weeks ahead. CBN's Matt Galka. Thank you so much, Matt. Well, authorities are now investigating domestic terrorism as a possible motive for the horrific mass shooting outside a Texas outlet mall over the weekend. That attack left 8 people dead and 7 others wounded. Investigators have uncovered disturbing new details centering on the 33-year-old suspect's social media posts. The gunman kept a profile on the Russian social networking platform OK.ru filled with white supremacist and neo-Nazi ideology, posting a series of photos of the mall suggesting Garcia scouted the location for at least a year. Well, growing concerns tonight that the border crisis is about to get worse as COVID-era immigration restrictions known as Title 42 come to an end. CBN's Brody Carter joins us now. Brody, I understand you spoke with a policy expert who had a grim description of what's happening down there in the southern border.
Well, John, you're exactly right here. During the 2020 campaign, then candidate Joe Biden promised to remove Title 42. And now that it's set to expire this Thursday, the federal government has sent 1,500 troops to the border, hoping to contain this expected surge.
The administration is planning on 10,000 migrants arriving each day. Some estimates say that it could be even higher than that.
Under Title 42, authorities quickly expelled migrants almost 3 million times, according to U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Often those that crossed and were sent back to Mexico tried again.
To the individuals themselves who are thinking of migrating, do not believe the smugglers.
Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas sees extremely challenging circumstances along the Mexico border. Come Friday, new rules will allow 1,000 migrants per day to be processed for asylum. Only 10% of the migrants expected to flood the border.
So they're more or less saying, we're going to process 1,000, that's it. Everyone else, you're going to go cross illegally, and that's what's going to happen. And it's going to be a chaotic couple of weeks.
David Beer with the Cato Institute predicts a bit of sleight of hand to ease the chaos.
The goal of the administration's policies is to replicate Title 42 under our immigration laws. So I don't think we're going to see much of a difference from after Title 42 versus before Title 42 in terms of policy.
Large groups of migrants are already staged in Mexico, ready to cross with nothing except the clothes on their backs. As pressure mounts along the border, some fear of violence against migrants.
Officers found multiple casualties and several injured.
Texas police say this man, George Alvarez, ran a red light Sunday morning plowing into a crowd of Venezuelans outside of a prominent migrant center. He's charged with 8 counts of manslaughter and 10 counts of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
It's inevitable as long as people continue to describe them as invaders rather than as people who are seeking safety and opportunity in our country.
Meanwhile, the White House is pointing fingers at Republicans for a system that's been broken for decades.
But Congress refuses to act. Instead, many Republican officials want to make a political case out of this. They're not looking to meet us at the table to actually deal with this issue. They want to turn this into a political stunt.
The Border Patrol reports apprehending 26,000 migrants in just 72 hours this week alone. In addition to sending troops, the White House will expand holding facilities and add immigration officers to help process asylum seekers. John, back to you.
All right, Brody Carter in our Virginia Beach newsroom. Thank you, Brody. Well, here with us now is Chief Political Analyst David Brody. David, we'll get to the civil trial in just a moment, but I want to thematically just keep it here. Title 42, as you well know, officially ends Thursday. David, how will this play out both in the short term politically and in the long term as we look down the road to 2024 and the race for the White House?
Well, it's going to be, once again, a top-tier issue. It's not going away. As a matter of fact, it'll be heightened. It does remind me a little bit of Donald Trump in 2016 when he made immigration the signature issue. Already over the weekend, I spoke to Nikki Haley about it. Ron DeSantis will be talking about it. So if you just go down the list, it's not going away. And once again, it'll be prevalent, John, for sure.
Speaking of former President Trump, we know that the Manhattan jury of 9 found him guilty of sexual abuse, not rape. Can you talk about the significance of today's verdict and how it will impact not just President Trump, as he's known for his presidency and his 4 years in office, but as a candidate, again, running for the White House?
Well, I think it goes to the drama storyline. You know, I think you're going to have, whether it be Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley or some other candidates say, look, ultimately, this is about the drama that President Trump brings, and enough already. We need to move on. Like, appreciate your service. Your policies were great, but we don't need the drama. And I think this will be another notch in that storyline. So we'll wait and see how it turns out.
David, do you think this has been part of their strategy, just to kind of wait out some of Trump's legal issues to see if there's a lane for them to actually make the case for the White House?
I think so. I mean, but at the same time, every time the folks, I say the folks, whether you call it the deep state or the left or the Democrats or an Alvin Bragg, they all come after him. It just makes Trump stronger, and his poll numbers continue to get stronger. So I'm not quite sure if that lane is eventually going to open, but they do hope there'll at least be one person standing in that lane, a la Ted Cruz back in 2016, who will be this time around.
Fair enough, David. Real quickly here, SBA Pro-Life America signaled that it's patched things up with President Trump after his spokesperson said that federal restrictions on abortion should be a states' right issue. Why the reversal, real quickly?
Well, just real quick, I never really thought this was going to be a big issue anyhow. It sounds like a reversal, but really what it is that Trump has all along been for some sort of federal solution. He was 4-1 as president. He's going to be 4-1 eventually, and that's why Marjorie Dannenfelser and folks realize that, hey, at the SBA list, Trump is pretty much simpatico with them overall.
All right, that's going to have to be the last word. David Brody, Chief Political Analyst, thanks as always for your insights.
You bet.
Coming up, the push to protect kids online and how new rules could remake the internet. Welcome back. We're seeing a greater push to restrict children's access to the harmful effects of the internet. Those include statewide proposals for minors on apps like TikTok or pornography websites, which in turn have raised new questions about privacy and access to online services. Both Arkansas and Utah already passed restrictions, and at least 7 other states, along with Congress, are considering age requirements. Anti-porn bills in 8 states, from Florida to Idaho, would require phone and tablet makers to turn on content filters by default. Some critics argue the nationwide push to require social media age verification and censor sexual material would limit adults' access to the internet. Well, for more, let's bring in Donna Rice Hughes. She's the president and CEO of Enough is Enough. Donna, welcome. Can I get you to weigh in on that last thought, this idea that some of those restrictions could hinder adult access to online services? Do those arguments hold any merit?
They hold absolutely no merit, John. These are the same kinds of arguments that the ACLU and the American Library Association and big tech back in the 90s when I started were making. And the fact of the matter is we have seen the reality that these tech companies and services are not self-regulating. So it's very, very important that we extend the same kind of protections to protect kids in the online world and that they have in the offline world. And I think what you're seeing at the federal level as well as the state level is legislators saying enough is enough. We tried it your way, hasn't worked.
Donna, how far along are some of these state bills, and do you think we'll see more age verification and porn censorship laws pop up?
Yes, I do. Where we're already seeing states start to move. All it takes is one state have a success. We certainly have seen that in Utah. We saw it in Louisiana. There are multiple other states that we're working with where actually if a child turns on a laptop or a smartphone, that those controls have to be on to filter child pornography and pornography. But we're also seeing some very important legislation at the federal level. And one in particular just passed out of the Justice Committee, and it's on the floor of the Senate right now, and it's called the Earn It Act. And this law actually is calling on these big tech services, if they know that there is child pornography or what we call CSAM now, child sexual abuse material on their sites, they have to take it down. They cannot be shielded by Section 230. And this is really important. Let me just give you a couple of really key facts right now. Just last year, there were 32 million reports of this type of content, the sexual abuse of children, some as young as toddlers and infants, being reported. That is absolutely incredible. 265% increase in the online enticement of kids online. We are dealing with a public health pandemic, and by golly, it's about time that legislators take action, but we're going to need the public support here, and it's really important. And with Earn It, if your listeners would like to call Senator Schumer and say, let's call for a vote on this. We the people want it. That would go a long way.
Donna, we know that laws are important, but we also know that parents can do things as well. We're going to have you back again with us next time to learn more about what parents can do. But for now, Donna Rice Hughes with Enough is Enough. Thank you so much for being with us tonight.
Go to our website at enough.org. We've got all that information there as well.
Thank you so much, Donna. Well, answering the call to care for the vulnerable. When we come back, how churches are bringing hope, health, and healing to homes with adopted children. Well, May is National Foster Care Month, a perfect opportunity to highlight how so many kids in the system wind up dealing with anxiety, depression, and PTSD. So how do adoptive and foster parents help children navigate their extremely difficult emotional journeys? CBN's Charlene Aaron shows us how churches and other ministries are now providing these families with mental health support.
When it comes to adopting, Christians are twice as likely to bring a child into their home than other Americans. According to research by the Barna Study Group, 5% of Christians have adopted compared to 2% of all Americans. Many parents feel they have a biblical mandate to offer love and hope, including to those bearing scars from past traumas.
James says true religion is to care for the orphan and the widow.
Michael and Libby Romanin of Lucky, Ohio felt led to become foster parents after hearing a sermon about the biblical admonition to care for orphans.
It really resonated with us and convicted us.
Over the years, the Christian couple, who has 3 biological children, has fostered some 17 kids. In 2022, they adopted 2, saying that abuse, neglect, and drug use are all reasons kids can end up in foster care.
A lot of the children, which is true for our adopted daughters, is they experience anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, something called ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder.
Issues which make parenting all the more difficult.
Every adoption starts with some kind of trauma, pain, problem. Anytime there's an adoption, it's because something went terribly wrong.
A wrong the Romanins have found that even love has trouble overcoming.
We have considered dissolving an adoption just because one of our daughters has expressed to us that she doesn't really want to be a part of our family.
Jed Medifind is president of Christian Alliance for Orphans, which works to help Christians care for orphans and vulnerable children. He admits while adoption can be a wonderful experience, there are exceptions.
Children who have experienced serious hardship, deprivation, abuse will often have special challenges in their journey, and that healing and health really require special attention.
Dr. Stephen Gersevich is president and founder of Key Ministry, a nonprofit that focuses on the church's role in ministering to families and children with disabilities. He points out that children in foster care and adoption are more likely to suffer behavioral problems.
They're 7 times more likely to have a problem with depression. They're 5 times more likely to have a problem with an anxiety disorder. 3 times more likely to have a problem with ADHD.
According to Medifind, this is why ongoing support for adoptive families is vital.
There are many families who felt very supported and encouraged at the point of adoption, but then as they face the greater challenges of the journey, have felt that their church hasn't been there for them as they would hope.
Thanks to the work of organizations like his and Key Ministry, many congregations are now filling the void.
Churches are stepping up to wrap around adoptive families, foster families, struggling biological families in very practical ways. Bringing meals over, helping with babysitting, doing yard work, being prayerful in the journey, just so that the families know they're not alone.
While the Romanins welcome such help, they're quick to point out the greater need for more education and counseling.
We have friends who bring us meals and have helped with laundry and who do childcare and all of these things, but there's still the degree to which it's hard to step into a situation that is sometimes unstable and sometimes maybe scary.
Gersevich adds while many churches have established adoption and foster care ministries, some now are approaching the issue with mental health programs in mind.
These types of conditions, mental health conditions specifically, are a major barrier to church attendance for families who have, who have kids with these struggles. So, for example, if a family has a child with depression, the likelihood of them setting foot in a church decreases by 73%. It's 55% if you have a kid with a disruptive behavior disorder.
Despite those challenges, Medifine believes the benefits of adoption outweigh the negatives.
Children that have been welcomed into families that way do dramatically better than children who grow up in orphanages or in group homes or in the foster system.
Meanwhile, the Romanins are relying on that hope as they continue their adoption journey.
It's made my faith stronger in a sense that it is constantly putting me at the feet of Jesus. Just really desperate for help and desperate for answers.
There's this pairing of the beauty and the costliness of adoption. And I think anyone who's considering adoption or is already in it really needs to hold both of those things together. The adoption mirrors the gospel story, both in its beauty and in its costliness.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Beauty and costly. Thank you so much, Charlene. Well, at 93, Apollo astronaut Buzz Aldrin notches another first in his career tool belt. More on his next mission when Faith Nation returns. Finally tonight, as if spacewalks and landing on the moon weren't enough, Apollo astronaut Buzz Aldrin climbed to another height in his career. The 93-year-old, now an honorary brigadier general of the Space Systems Command in Los Angeles, a way for the Space Force to honor his contributions to space exploration.
It is thrilling that I am still here to see NASA sending brave astronauts to circumnavigate the moon.
Aldrin's position will include coordinating launches for the United States Space Force, supporting NASA's next mission to the moon. 93 and still going and still looking good. I guess some people just don't believe in retirement. Well, thanks so much for watching Faith Nation. We always appreciate you joining us. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.